France is a country that seems to be in a constant state of transformation. It is like a phoenix, the mythical bird that burns to ashes only to be reborn, stronger and more vibrant than before. Throughout its long and dramatic history, France has collapsed and rebuilt itself time and time again. It has swung wildly between powerful monarchies, chaotic revolutions, and glorious empires. This endless cycle of reinvention is not just a footnote in its story, it is the very heart of what it means to be French. It is a tale of passion, of grand ideas, and of a relentless drive to shape its own destiny, often with explosive and world-changing results. This story of reinvention is etched into the very stones of Paris, from the grand palaces of kings to the streets where revolutionaries once marched. You can feel it in the air, a sense of history that is both heavy with the past and buzzing with the energy of the present. France's journey is one of immense highs and devastating lows. It has been a beacon of culture and philosophy, giving the world ideas of liberty and human rights. But it has also experienced terrible violence and political upheaval. Understanding France means understanding this constant struggle, this dramatic dance between order and chaos, tradition and radical change. We will explore this remarkable journey, starting from the very earliest days when tribes roamed the land we now call France. We will see how a kingdom was slowly pieced together, creating a uniquely French identity. We will witness the flames of revolution that sought to burn down the old world and build a new one based on ideals that still inspire people today. And we will follow the rise of an emperor who took those revolutionary ideals and spread them across Europe, not with pamphlets, but with cannons and armies. It's a story that is grand, complex, and utterly fascinating. This essay will guide you through these pivotal moments. We will look at how France, through each crisis and each triumph, reshaped itself. It's a narrative about more than just kings, queens, and generals. It is about how a nation developed its soul. It is about the food, the art, the language, and the deep-seated belief that France has a special role to play in the world. From the medieval knights to the modern-day leaders navigating a complex global stage, the spirit of reinvention remains the one constant in the epic tale of France. Long before the Eiffel Tower touched the Paris sky, the land was known as Gaul. It was a territory of the mighty Roman Empire. But as Rome's power faded, new groups of people moved in. The most important of these were the Franks, a Germanic tribe who gave the country its name, France. Their great leader Clovis became a Christian around the year 500. This was a very clever move. By converting to Christianity, he gained the support of the church and the local Gallo-Roman people. This helped him unite the different Frankish kingdoms under his rule, laying the very first stone in the foundation of the French state. Centuries later, another great leader emerged from this Frankish world. His name was Charlemagne, or Charles the Great. He was a brilliant military leader and a clever ruler who dreamed of rebuilding the old Roman Empire in the West. He expanded his kingdom to cover most of Western Europe, and in the year 800 the Pope crowned him emperor. Charlemagne was more than just a conqueror, he was also a great supporter of learning and culture. He started a small renaissance of education and art, ensuring that knowledge from the ancient world was not lost. His empire did not last long after his death, but the idea of a unified Christian kingdom in Europe left a powerful legacy. After Charlemagne's empire broke apart, the Kingdom of France began to take a more recognizable shape. In 987, a nobleman named Hugh Capet was elected king. This was the beginning of the Capetian dynasty, a line of kings that would rule France for over 300 years. The early Capetian kings were not very powerful. They only controlled a small area of land around Paris, while powerful dukes and counts ruled the rest of the country as if they were kings themselves. But slowly and surely, the Capetians used smart politics, strategic marriages, and military force to expand their power and their territory. During this medieval period, a unique French culture began to blossom. The French language, which grew out of the Latin spoken by the Romans, started to develop. Magnificent Gothic cathedrals, like Notre Dame in Paris, were built, reaching towards the heavens with their pointed arches and stained glass windows. These incredible buildings were not just places of worship, they were symbols of faith, wealth, and the growing power of the French monarchy. Knights in shining armor, tales of chivalry, and epic poems became part of a vibrant culture that spread across Europe, marking France as a center of art and sophistication even in these early days. The growing power of France eventually led to a massive conflict with its neighbor, England. This conflict is known as the 100 Years' War, though it actually lasted for 116 years from 1337 to 1453. The main cause was a dispute over who should be the king of France. The English kings had a claim to the French throne and also controlled large areas of French land. The war was a long and brutal series of battles and sieges that devastated the French countryside. For many years it seemed as if England would win. The English army, with its deadly longbows, won major victories at Crécy and Agincourt. The French kingdom was on the verge of collapse. In France's darkest hour, a hero emerged from the most unlikely of places. She was a young peasant girl named Joan of Arc. She claimed to hear the voices of saints telling her to drive the English out of France and to see the French heir Charles crowned as king. At first no one believed her, but her passion and conviction were so strong that she was eventually given command of a small army. In 1429 she led the French to a miraculous victory at the Siege of Orléans. This victory was a turning point. It filled the French soldiers with new hope and a belief that God was on their side. Joan's success continued, and she led Charles to the city of Reims, the traditional place where French kings were crowned. His coronation as King Charles VII was a huge symbolic victory for the French. It confirmed him as the rightful king in the eyes of the people. Sadly, Joan's story did not have a happy ending. She was captured by enemies, sold to the English, and put on trial for heresy. In 1431, she was burned at the stake. But her death did not stop the momentum she had started. She became a martyr and a powerful symbol of French resistance and faith. The 100 Years' War had a profound effect on France. The constant fighting and shared struggle against a common enemy forged a new sense of national identity. Before the war, people thought of themselves as loyal to their local lord, as Burgundians or Normans. After the war, they began to see themselves as French. Joan of Arc became a national heroine, a symbol of a France that could overcome any obstacle. The war also strengthened the power of the king, who now had a permanent, professional army. France emerged from the ashes of the war not as a collection of feudal territories, but as a unified and powerful nation. By the late 18th century, France was ruled by an absolute monarch, King Louis XVI. French society was deeply unfair. It was divided into three groups, or estates. The first estate was the clergy, the second estate was the nobility, and the third estate was everyone else, from poor farmers to wealthy merchants. The first two estates had all the privileges. They owned most of the land and paid almost no taxes. The third estate, which made up 97% of the population, carried the entire tax burden. This inequality, combined with new ideas about liberty and human rights from thinkers of the Enlightenment, created a recipe for revolution. The country was also bankrupt from expensive wars, and the people were hungry. The breaking point came in 1789. On July 14th, a mob of angry Parisians stormed the Bastille, a medieval fortress used as a prison. This event was not just about freeing a few prisoners, it was a symbolic attack on the king's absolute power. It showed that the people were no longer afraid. Soon after, the new revolutionary government issued a groundbreaking document, the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. It declared that all men were born free and equal in rights. It introduced revolutionary ideas like freedom of speech and justice under the law. The old world was crumbling, and a new France was being born. However, the revolution did not bring immediate peace or stability. In fact, it led to a period of extreme violence and chaos known as the Reign of Terror. The most radical revolutionaries, the Jacobins, led by Maximilien Robespierre, took control. They wanted to erase every trace of the old France. They executed King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette by guillotine. Fearing enemies both inside and outside France, they created a climate of suspicion and fear. Anyone suspected of being an enemy of the revolution could be arrested and executed. Thousands of people, many of them innocent, were sent to the guillotine during this bloody period. The revolution completely transformed France and had a huge impact on the rest of the world. It destroyed the old system of monarchy and aristocracy forever. It championed the ideals of liberté, égalité, fraternité, liberty, equality, fraternity, which became the national motto of France. Although it led to terrible violence and years of instability, the French Revolution established the principle that power should come from the people, not from a king chosen by God. It was a messy, violent, and world-changing reinvention that put France at the center of modern political history. The ideas it unleashed would inspire and frighten people for centuries to come. Out of the chaos and uncertainty of the French Revolution, one man rose to become the most powerful figure in Europe. His name was Napoleon Bonaparte. He was a brilliant and ambitious young army general from the island of Corsica. He achieved great fame through a series of stunning military victories for the French Republic. The people of France were tired of the constant political fighting and instability. They longed for a strong leader who could bring order and glory back to the nation. Napoleon, with his charisma and military genius, was the perfect man for the job. In 1799 he seized power in a coup d'état, and a few years later in 1804, he crowned himself Emperor of the French. As emperor, Napoleon brought many of the revolution's ideas into a more stable and organized form. One of his most important and lasting achievements was the Napoleonic Code. This was a single set of laws for all of France. It protected many of the rights gained during the Revolution, such as equality before the law and religious freedom. It replaced the confusing collection of old feudal laws that had existed before 1789. The code was so clear and modern that it was adopted or used as a model by many other countries around the world, and it remains the basis of French law today. Napoleon also reformed the government, the banking system, and the education system, creating a more efficient and centralized state. Napoleon's ambition was not limited to France. He wanted to dominate all of Europe. For over a decade, he led his grand army in a series of brilliant military campaigns, conquering much of the continent. He defeated the powerful armies of Austria, Prussia, and Russia, placing his relatives and loyal marshals on the thrones of other European nations. His empire spread French ideas, laws, and systems of administration across Europe. While many people saw him as a liberator who brought modern reforms, others saw him as a tyrant and a conqueror who destroyed the old order for his own glory. Ultimately, Napoleon's ambition led to his downfall. His disastrous invasion of Russia in 1812 destroyed his grand army. The bitter Russian winter and fierce resistance were enemies he could not defeat. This massive failure encouraged the other European powers to unite against him. In 1814 they defeated him and exiled him to the small island of Elba. He escaped for a brief, dramatic return to power known as the 100 Days, but he was finally and completely defeated at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. Though his empire was gone, Napoleon had permanently changed France and Europe. He had cemented the revolution's reforms and left behind a powerful legend of French glory and power. After Napoleon's final defeat, France entered a turbulent period of political change. The 19th century was a revolving door of different governments. The monarchy was restored, then overthrown in another revolution in 1830. A new monarchy was established, which was then overthrown in yet another revolution in 1848. This led to the Second Republic, which was soon replaced by the Second Empire under Napoleon's nephew, Napoleon III. Finally, after a humiliating defeat in a war against Prussia in 1870, the Third Republic was declared. This republic, despite being shaky at first, would last for 70 years, providing a period of much-needed stability. During this era of political shifts, France was also busy building a vast overseas empire. It expanded its colonial possessions, seeking resources, markets, and international prestige. By the early 20th century, France controlled a huge empire stretching across North and West Africa, Southeast Asia, known as Indochina, and various islands in the Pacific and Caribbean. This colonial expansion had a deep impact on both France and the colonized lands. It brought French language and culture to distant parts of the world, but it was also built on exploitation and violence. The empire made France a global power but also created complex relationships and legacies that continue to shape France today. This period, especially from the late 19th century until 1914, is known as the Belle Époque, or Beautiful Era. It was a golden age of arts, science, and culture, particularly in Paris. The city became the undisputed cultural capital of the world. Artists like Monet and Renoir created the Impressionist movement, changing the way people saw the world. Writers like Victor Hugo and Émile Zola wrote powerful novels that are still read today. Scientists like Louis Pasteur and Marie Curie made groundbreaking discoveries. The Eiffel Tower, built for the 1889 World's Fair, became a symbol of modern French engineering and confidence. This golden age of peace and creativity, however, was built on a fragile foundation. Beneath the surface, tensions were rising in Europe. The rivalry with the newly unified and powerful Germany was particularly intense. France had lost the region of Alsace-Lorraine to Germany in the 1870 war, and a desire for revenge simmered. A complex system of alliances divided the continent into two armed camps. A massive arms race meant that the great powers were building huge armies and navies. The Belle Époque was a beautiful but deceptive calm before the storm of the First World War, a conflict that would shatter this world and change France forever. The First World War was a catastrophe for France. Much of the fighting on the Western Front took place on French soil, turning vast areas of the Northeast into a muddy, cratered wasteland. France and its allies were victorious, but the cost was unimaginable. Around 1.4 million French soldiers were killed, and millions more were wounded. The nation was deeply traumatized and economically exhausted. The desire to prevent such a disaster from ever happening again dominated French politics for the next 2 decades. This led to a defensive mindset, symbolized by the construction of the Maginot Line, a massive set of fortifications along the German border. Despite these precautions, France was unable to stop the rise of Nazi Germany. In 1940, during the Second World War, France suffered a swift and humiliating defeat. The northern half of the country was occupied by German forces, while a collaborationist government was set up in the south, in a town called Vichy. However, not all French people accepted defeat. From London, a general named Charles de Gaulle broadcast a message of defiance, calling on the French to continue the fight. He became the leader of the Free French Forces, and the symbol of the French resistance, a network of brave men and women who fought against the occupiers from within France. After the war, France was liberated, but once again in ruins and politically divided. The Fourth Republic, established after the war, was weak and unstable, struggling to deal with the collapse of France's colonial empire, particularly the brutal war in Algeria. In 1958, the country was on the brink of civil war. In this moment of crisis, the nation turned once again to Charles de Gaulle. He returned to power and created a new constitution for the Fifth Republic, which gave the president much more power and created the stable political system that France still has today. De Gaulle restored France's pride, pursued an independent foreign policy, and oversaw a period of rapid economic modernization. Today, France is a key player in the 21st century. It is a founding and central member of the European Union, working closely with Germany to lead the project of European integration. It remains a major diplomatic and military power, with a permanent seat on the UN Security Council. France fiercely protects and promotes its culture, from its world-famous cuisine and fashion to its cinema and language. The nation continues to grapple with its identity, balancing its long history with the challenges of a diverse modern society. From the ashes of 2 world wars, France has reinvented itself yet again, standing as a proud, influential nation shaped by its revolutionary past and its enduring cultural legacy.